waiting for the final act to unfold. The family huddled together, their combined breaths shallow and ragged. They drew strength from each other, knowing that they had to face this together. They knew, with chilling certainty, that they were not alone. The presence in the house was growing stronger, more malevolent with each passing moment. Something wicked this way comes. The shadows seemed to move with a life of their own, creeping closer, enveloping the family in darkness. They were mere steps away from confronting the malevolent force that held them captive. They had to find the strength to face it, to fight for their survival. A force that had haunted the house for centuries, feeding on the terror of its victims. The house had claimed many lives before, and it was hungry for more. The Thompsons were to be its newest prey. They could feel the malevolent force closing in, its hunger palpable, its intent clear. The question was not if the evil would come, but when. The family could feel the tension building, the air thick with anticipation. And what would become of them when it did? Would they find a way to escape, or would they become just another tragic story in the house's dark history? The answer lay just beyond the shadows, waiting to be revealed. The whispers began subtly, like the rustling of leaves just beyond the range of sight. They were faint at first, almost imperceptible, blending seamlessly with the natural sounds of the night. It was as if the very air carried a hidden message, a secret waiting to be uncovered. At first they were easy to dismiss as the wind playing tricks on their ears. The old house was full of creaks and groans, the kind that any ancient structure would make. The wind would howl through the cracks, creating eerie melodies that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. But the whispers persisted, growing louder, more distinct. They began to form words, phrases that sent chills down the spine. It was no longer just the wind, it was something more, something that seemed to have a will of its own. They spoke of unspeakable rituals, of sacrifices made in the name of an ancient forgotten god. The words were archaic, filled with a dark power that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the house. Each whisper was a fragment of a dark history, a piece of a puzzle that painted a picture of horror and dread. They spoke of a power so vast, so terrible, that it defied comprehension, a power that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The whispers hinted at a force that could bend reality, a malevolent presence that thrived on fear and despair. The whispers were a chilling testament to the darkness that had taken root within the house. The very air seemed to thicken with malevolence, each breath a struggle against the oppressive atmosphere. The house was no longer just a structure, it was a living entity, pulsating with dark energy. John, his face pale and drawn, strained to make sense of the whispers. He had always been a rational man, but this defied all logic. The whispers seemed to speak directly to him, filling his mind with images of ancient rites and dark ceremonies. They seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves, from the shadows that danced and writhed at the edge of their vision. The shadows took on forms, shapes that were almost human but twisted and grotesque. It was as if the house itself was alive, its walls a canvas for the dark forces at play. He had tried to convince himself it was just the house settling, the wind whistling through cracks, but the whispers were too persistent, too coherent to be mere noise. They carried a weight, a sense of purpose that was impossible to ignore. But deep down, he knew the truth. This was something far more sinister. The house was a vessel for an ancient evil, a conduit for a force that sought to break free from its confines. The realization filled him with a dread that was almost paralyzing. Mary, her eyes wide with terror, pulled Emma closer. She could feel the malevolent presence as well, a dark force that seemed to watch them from the shadows. Her maternal instincts kicked in, and she held her daughter tightly, as if her embrace could shield them from the impending doom. The young girl, her face buried in her mother's side, trembled in fear. Emma was too young to understand the full extent of the danger, but she could sense the fear in her parents' eyes. The whispers reached her too, their chilling pronouncements sending shivers down her spine. She had heard the whispers too, their chilling pronouncements sending shivers down her spine. The words were like icy fingers, creeping into her mind, and filling her with a terror she couldn't comprehend. She clung to her mother, seeking comfort in the only way she knew how. The whispers spoke of a being of immense power, a being who craved worship and demanded sacrifice. This entity was not just a ghost or a spirit, it was something far more ancient, a god that had been forgotten by time but not by the darkness. A being who had been summoned from the abyss long ago and bound to the house. The rituals had been performed with precision, each step a key to unlocking the door between worlds. The house was its prison, but also its sanctuary, a place where it could gather strength, a being who was now breaking free. The whispers were a sign, a herald of its impending release. The chains that had bound it for centuries were weakening, and soon it would be free to unleash its wrath upon the world. The family was trapped in a nightmare, hunted by an entity beyond their understanding. They were mere pawns in a game that had been set in motion long before they were born. The house had chosen them, and now they had to face the consequences. As the whispers grew louder, more insistent, they knew that their time was running out. The entity was growing stronger, feeding off their fear and despair. Each whisper was a countdown, a reminder that the end was near. The entity was close. It was waiting for them. The shadows seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The family could feel its presence, a dark force that was ready to claim them. They were not just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for their very souls. The attic door creaked open, revealing a cavernous space choked with dust and cobwebs. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as if it hadn't been disturbed for decades. Each step forward stirred up a cloud of dust, making the atmosphere even more oppressive. The air was heavy and still, thick with the smell of decay and something ancient, something profoundly unnerving. It was as if the very walls of the attic were whispering secrets of a dark past, secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. It felt like stepping into the lungs of a beast, a place where light dared not penetrate. The shadows seemed to move on their own, creating an eerie dance that played tricks on the mind. John, his heart pounding in his chest, took a tentative step forward. Each creak of the floorboards beneath his feet echoed like a warning, urging him to turn back. A single flickering light bulb cast long, distorted shadows across the attic floor, making it impossible to discern what was real and what was a trick of the light. The bulb's intermittent glow seemed to pulse in time with John's racing heartbeat. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon him, watching their every move. It was as if the very darkness was alive, breathing, and aware of their presence. Mary hesitated at the threshold, her grip tightening on Emma's hand. The little girl clung to her mother, her wide eyes reflecting the fear that gripped them both. "We shouldn't be here, John," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her words were barely audible, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the attic. "This place, it feels evil." The words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the stillness that surrounded them. But John pressed on, his sense of dread growing with each step. He felt a strange compulsion, an invisible force pulling him deeper into the attic's dark embrace. He knew that the source of the haunting, the entity that whispered in their ears, resided here. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if urging him to uncover the truth. In the center of the attic, surrounded by flickering candles and strange symbols drawn in what looked like dried blood, lay a book. The symbols seemed to pulse with a life of their own, casting an eerie glow in the dim light. It was bound in ancient leather, its pages filled with faded script and disturbing illustrations. The book seemed to emanate a dark energy, as if it were a living entity waiting to be awakened. As John reached for the book, the whispers intensified, swirling around him like a vortex of madness. His hand trembled as he touched the cover, feeling a cold, unnatural chill. He opened the book, his eyes widening as he recognized the language. Latin. The words seemed to leap off the page, their meaning clear despite the ancient script. He began to read aloud, his voice echoing through the silent attic. The words were a dark incantation, a summoning of forces beyond human comprehension. The words he spoke were a chilling account of the cult that had once inhabited the house, of their dark rituals and their worship of an entity of unimaginable power. The rituals described were gruesome, involving sacrifices and blood rites that sent shivers down John's spine. And at the center of it all, the book revealed the truth. The entity was not just a malevolent spirit. It was a being of immense power, a dark god that the cult had sought to awaken. It was the spirit of the cult's leader, a man named Silas Blackwood, who had vowed to return from the grave and unleash his reign of terror upon the world. His image, drawn in the book, was haunting, his eyes seeming to follow John as he read. The Thompsons were caught in the crossfire of an ancient evil's resurrection. They had unwittingly become the key to Silas Blackwood's return, their presence in the attic triggering the final steps of the dark ritual. The symbols on the floor began to glow more intensely, the air crackling with dark energy. The attic seemed to come alive, the walls vibrating with a low, ominous hum. John, Mary, and Emma huddled together, their fear palpable. The shadows seemed to close in around them, the darkness growing thicker, more oppressive. John tried to close the book, but it was as if an invisible force held it open. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if the entity was fighting to break free. With a final, desperate effort, John slammed the book shut. The attic fell silent, the oppressive energy dissipating. They fled down the stairs, the echoes of the dark ritual still ringing in their ears. Outside, they looked back at the attic window, now dark and silent. The house seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, the ancient evil once again contained. But the Thompsons knew that the darkness was still there, lurking, waiting for the next opportunity to awaken.